Jack stands beside his old wooden bridge, holding a paper showing a shocking $1,200 charge. Across the bridge, two bank representatives stare at him as if they expect him to simply pay. For years, Jack had maintained the bridge himself. It connected his property to the main road and had become an important part of the surrounding community. One afternoon, a black SUV arrived at Jack's property with bank officials inside. They claimed the bank had a new access agreement connected to the road beyond his bridge. Richard explained that the bank now considered the crossing part of an access arrangement. Jack listened quietly, already suspicious about where the conversation was going. Then Richard handed Jack the document. It demanded $1,200 for continued use of the crossing that Jack believed was entirely his responsibility and property. Jack refused to argue on the spot. Instead, he went home and began reviewing his property records, old maps, maintenance receipts, and access documents. An old property survey caught Jack's attention. The bridge and the land around it were clearly marked in a way that changed the entire situation. The next morning, Jack visited the county records office to verify everything. He wanted facts before making a single decision. The records confirmed what Jack had suspected. The bridge was connected to his privately owned parcel, but the access situation involved several separate agreements that needed careful review. Jack returned home with a clear plan. He would not fight the bank with anger. He would follow the proper process and let the paperwork speak for itself. Jack sent the bank a formal written response explaining the ownership records and requesting clarification of the $1,200 charge. He gave them time to respond. The bank responded with confidence. Richard insisted that Jack should simply pay the fee if he wanted continued access. Jack looked directly at Richard and calmly explained that he was prepared to resolve the matter through the appropriate legal and administrative channels. The deadline came and went without a workable agreement. Jack now had to decide what to do with a bridge that had become the center of the dispute. Rather than doing anything recklessly, Jack contacted a licensed professional crew to inspect the bridge and determine what could legally be done with the privately maintained structure. The inspection revealed that the aging wooden bridge required significant maintenance. Jack realized the dispute had created an opportunity to finally address the structure properly. Jack made his decision. If the bridge could no longer serve its original purpose under the disputed arrangement, he would proceed with its lawful removal and handle the access issue through proper channels. Everyone who could be affected received advance notice. Jack wanted no surprises, only a clean and documented resolution. On the final day, Jack stood quietly on the bridge one last time. He remembered years of driving across it and maintaining every board himself. A professional crew began dismantling the old bridge according to the approved plan. Jack watched as the structure that had caused months of conflict slowly disappeared. Richard arrived expecting to use a familiar crossing, but stopped when he saw the bridge was gone. Richard demanded an explanation. Jack calmly pointed toward the official notices and documents that had already been provided. Daniel reviewed the documents and slowly realized that Jack had followed every step of the agreed process. The bank's confidence began to disappear. The bank suddenly faced a major logistical problem. The familiar route was no longer available. Their property now needed a completely different access solution. The bank called an urgent meeting. Richard was no longer asking Jack to pay. He was asking how the access problem could be resolved. Jack received a call requesting a meeting. He agreed, but this time he arrived knowing the balance of the conversation had completely changed. The bank finally proposed working together on a new access solution instead of charging Jack for using his own property. Jack listened carefully. After negotiations, both sides reached a practical arrangement. The old dispute over the $1,200 fee was finally put to rest. Standing beside the river, Jack looked at the empty crossing and smiled. The bridge had cost him time and effort, but it had also taught the bank a valuable lesson about respecting property and agreements. Jack never needed to shout or threaten anyone. He simply documented the facts, followed the proper process, and stood his ground, and that was enough to change everything. If you enjoyed this HOA-style property story, make sure to subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from.